OMG, baby, tell him.
Hey there, welcome to Powered by Backers. This is Justin Fox with Backers. I am here with my guest. Let's see if I can get it right now with the screen. Michael Crowley. Michael, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
All right, perfect. So Michael is, I'll give you a quick little bio. Michael is, let's get to it. Mike, you're president of 108 Securities, which you founded in 2011, and managing partner of Cassandra Capital LP, which is a private venture capital fund that you co-founded in 2007. You have 25 plus years of banking and investment experience. You've recently led clients through a variety of investment banking and venture capital mandates. You have extensive experience in the CEO, CFO, and board of governance roles in various organizations. You've been the director serving as a director for portfolio private and public companies and 2 venture capital funds. Currently, 108 Securities is an OSC regulated and licensed exempt market dealer where you have and hold obviously all the regulatory compliance requirements. So welcome to Powered by Backers. This is Asking the Expert. Michael, you are the expert. So again, thank you for joining me. And we'll jump right in. So without further ado, why don't you tell the crowd, all the people watching, what is it that's brought you to this point? So we'll talk about pre-COVID. Everything's pre-COVID, and we'll talk about sort of COVID after. But tell us a little bit about your experience. You've got 25 years of investment banking experience. Tell us a little bit about that. Where you got started and what's brought you to this point.
Okay. In a nutshell, I started off with an undergrad in life sciences, sort of physiology, pharmacology, going down the medicine pathway.
Okay.
And then I moved from there into an MBA with McMaster. And out of McMaster, I was really into the securities business. So I was in institutional equity sales and then translated into corporate banking and then went into commercial banking, which generally is private ownership, privately owned businesses. So I was the corporate and commercial account manager for businesses anywhere from revenues from maybe 5 million to 150 million,
Okay.
to the extent that I think.
Who were you with at that point?
Pardon me?
Who were you with at that point?
I was with Bank of Montreal. So I was with BMO, and in the 90s, BMO, under Matt Barrett's leadership, they created a innovation and technology group, which was addressing the knowledge-based sector, which in the 90s, like in the late 90s, that was a unique strategy because, knowledge-based banking was a bit of an oxymoron because how could you have knowledge and be a banker at the same time?
Right.
That was a joke.
But knowledge-based
banking was really moving away from asset-based lending.
Okay.
Where you're really investing in, you're providing
in a cash
credit
flow
to companies that are knowledge-based. So at that time, Amazon was in the early days. The internet was only just being created, and in fact, I had some of the earliest ISPs that were came to market, and the people that were driving
internet service providers for all those that are watching.
They came out of the library sciences faculties in universities. In fact, my first one was maybe like a $10,000 overdraft to a company. I called them Birkenstock and Woolen Sock, and that company has grown into one of the largest ISPs in southwestern Ontario today. So from acorns, tall oaks grew. And that was something that I became very focused on. And I think that was sort of after the 92 recession. So after these shakeouts, there's a whole flora of new opportunities start to grow. And it's just kind of the cycle. And so then from there, I was, that was a very interesting role. And then I evolved into just bigger companies that were doing more things. But if you recall, Microsoft was not a big company at that time. Amazon was only getting its sea legs at that time.
What are we talking, like
Software,
90s, in the early 90s?
In the 90s, those
90s?
companies were
Okay.
just being seeded.
Right.
And then from there, I moved to a research institute called Robarts Research, which was the largest, smallest, richest, poorest, independent medical research institute, which was the only medical research institute.
I was going to say largest, smallest, you have to be the
So we
owner.
had about 10, I was a business development, VP Biz Dev. We spun off about 10 companies through that period where I was from start. A lot of them were intellectually property based. We probably raised the better part of $100 million, sold 3 of the 10 companies, one of them to GE. So got a lot of experience from there. And then from there, I moved back into more of a private sector and went in with a small IROC dealer, investment banking. And then I started my own investment bank called 108 Securities. And in parallel with that, I started a fund with a partner called Cassandra Capital, and we invested in a number of technology-based companies, which today, I think probably out of 10, maybe 2 were public. And, they had a lot of the typical venture capital characteristics of 2 do really well, 6 are kind of living dead, and 2 crash and burn. So I got a lot of exposure from that, and I've been doing private equity investments with partners where we're buying middle-sized, mid-market, succession-based acquisitions of private businesses. And really, I've now, as the initial dealer and close partner with backers.
I was just going to say, I was going to introduce you are
okay.
You stole my thunder. No, just kidding.
So to me, this addresses a lot of the collective experience that I've had with financing entrepreneurial businesses,
right?
And what defines success and what can create.
So there you go. Yeah, exactly. So I'll do the intro. So Michael runs 108 Securities. 108 Securities is the first dealer on the Backers platform, licensing the software of Backers to launch their very own funding portal. And that funding portal will be going live April 27th with the very first campaign, ironically, or I guess it's only appropriate, will be Backers actually raising capital on that funding portal. So April 27th, stay tuned for that. So let's talk about this. The cat's out of the bag. 108 Securities is the first dealer on the platform, the first of many. The whole sort of, call it platform model. I don't want to use the F word that ends in ISE, not UCK, for all you people with your minds in the gutter. But anyways, the F word, it is sort of an F-type model or platform-type model. So in your experience, where do you see, so we talk about private equity, where do you see the private equity market going as a whole, venture capital? Where do you see it going forward from where it is today? Obviously, we're gonna take the question that it's on everyone's minds, coronavirus, COVID-19, the pandemic. Where do you see it going from where it was, say March 1st, and where do you see it next March 1st or 3 March 1st from now?
Well, I think I don't have a crystal ball, just like you, that we can't really predict the future. However, if you look at the past, I think the patterns of innovation, you tend to get a lot of innovation after these crises are created. And I think even right out of the gate here, we're seeing a lot of these digital mediums are really starting to be exploited, and companies from big to small are starting to realize the efficiencies of operating parts of their business in a digital platform. And I think if your brand isn't digitally oriented, it's in the Harvard Business Review, I think digitizing businesses was considered to be one of the top priorities of all of the CEOs interviewed for that forum. So I think
recently? Was that recently? I did not see that. Very recently,
recently in the last, like the 2019 review, that was something that
so
was
that's
on the
interesting
list.
that was even pre
So that's a priority that
pre-pandemic.
I think a lot of businesses want to try and because it inherently means efficiencies that are being created.
Right, and scalability, right, into various.
So I think that we're going to see a lot of unique innovations that entrepreneurs are going to start to take advantage of, and I think it's going to be just an entrepreneur's dream. And to that end, I think that the Black Backers platform will be a good opportunity possibly to help some of these entrepreneurs, and I don't say young, old, or whatever. An entrepreneur has no characteristics that way, and I think the approach that we're taking for this is unique, and the proof will be in the pudding.
Yeah, no, I agree, and so I've used the term, and a lot of people that have come on here, and I know you've seen a few of the episodes, Michael, are that necessity is the mother of invention, right? That's gonna and out of that necessity breeds some new opportunities. So and yeah, you just sort of touched on it. Backers, obviously, we've been working together for over a year now on bringing 108 Securities into the mix. What are your thoughts? How do you? I'm going to ask you because the audience here has heard me say it probably 1,000 times, and they're still not really sure, or maybe they're on the bubble of how can backers help them in their business, and how can backers as a platform facilitate them raising capital from their audience. So as a basically sort of a private securities exchange on your funding portal. So kind of touch on what are your thoughts on backers as a digital investor onboarding tool? What are your thoughts on that, and how do you see backers playing into the private equity space?
Well, I think it democratizes the access of capital for businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, for an investor will invest in a good idea, and how they do that will be their choice. I think from our point of view, or from the backers' point of view, that the platform that we're creating is going to deal with a lot of the pain points that an entrepreneur has to address in raising capital. And I think typically raising capital is dealt with in sort of a silo effect, as opposed to a broader based approach, which I think is what the backers program is doing. So
right. So
the focus.
I'll
have clients that would come to me. They need to raise money, and right. So in raising money, okay, we got to figure out what's your value proposition, what's your story, how are you engaging with your customers, and all of that stuff is really fundamental to a business. And I think it's appropriate that the entrepreneurs have to kind of do all that legwork, so that it's authentic.
So it's kind of the whole message of typical fundraising or raising capital is around you're focused on just raising capital and not on your day-to-day operations. Whereas with the backers model, which I think you were kind of alluding to, is now your focus is on your day-to-day operations as a business, telling that story and creating that message, building that audience, growing your brand, getting new customers, getting new clients in the door as part of your whole funding, process, right? So by doing all of the first step, you then inevitably get the second step, because it's your audience that's investing in your idea, right? It's your customers, your clients, your users, your suppliers, your community. They are becoming your supporters, and then will become your backers, or they already are your backers. They'll now invest in your business. So that's, definitely there's that double
it's interesting.
focus.
I was looking at Jeff Bezos last year was interviewed and was asking about when he raised his initial capital. And he said that he went to 60 or 80 people to raise $1 million, and he got 20 50s.
Yeah.
And he said most of them that he talked to at the time didn't know what the internet was. So that was kind of his first question. And so I would say that in this next wave, we're going to have probably some Amazons and some Microsofts that are going to come through our door. And a lot of the people will kind of ask, okay, what is the, cloud or whatever it is that they're going to base their business model on. But I think the difference here is that it's not the 50,000 accredited investor. I think the average person that understands the opportunity will have an opportunity to invest. $50,000 investment in Amazon in 1994 is worth $30 billion today. Okay, so if the average individual can put $1,000 or $5,000 in, that's a good story, and that entrepreneur is going to have an audience that believe in them, and they're going to help advance their business proposition and whatnot. So I mean, it can't be done in a traditional, like the traditional paper-based model. It just doesn't work for this. I mean, this system is based on a blockchain.
Too cumbersome. So even
operating structure, and it's I would not pursue those kind of private placements, and most even lawyers wouldn't do it because the paper would just be overwhelming, and you'd have to go to a mental institution to recover, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, just to throw numbers out there, you kind of threw them out there. So in what we're operating under currently, when we roll this out, is the 45-108 crowdfunding exemption through the Ontario Securities Commission. And so what that enables, and we can operate under, and this is where we call our platform jurisdictionally agnostic, so we can operate in any jurisdiction with a dealer from any jurisdiction, and they can operate under that regulatory framework. But under the current one, it's the 45-108 crowdfunding exemption. A business can raise up to $1.5 million from an unlimited number of investors, with each investor non-accredited, so everyday retail investors investing as much as $2,500 each per investment opportunity. So they can invest as little as $100 up to $2,500 and everywhere in between. And then you can have accredited up to $25,000. So what, you just said there, instead of having the $1 million that Bezos raised at 50K, times 20 investors, you can now have 1,000 investors, let's just say at $1,000 each. There's your $1 million, but now you have 1,000 people who are invested in your business, people who understand the opportunity, the idea, they're maybe your customer, they're your client, they're your user, and they become super fans, or obviously, as we like to call them, backers, right? So we've talked, we'll talk a little bit about that. Let's talk a little bit about, so obviously, we're excited. You're excited, I'm assuming. Although is that your excited face? Let's see. Show everyone the excited face.
I'm excited.
Excited. It's pretty exciting times, within the backers environment. Michael's our resident expert on the investment management side. So we've sort of been walking through with him. We met with the OSC to talk about the whole platform and get the green light to go ahead. What are your thoughts? I guess we'll so April 27th, Backers is raising capital. Be sure to check that out. April 27th, it'll be on the 108 Securities Funding Portal. But so just remember April 27th in case you forgot. But let's switch gears a little bit. Let's stop pumping the tires of Backers. What are your thoughts, more on entrepreneurs in general, going through this experience? You yourself are running a company, so talk a little bit about the company you're currently running, not 108 Securities, but you're running the, what is it? There's a couple of businesses. What's that? No, not Cassandra, the wood business.
Yeah, I have an investment in a...
and then also the brands business.
Distribution
business, right? You've got North
I have
America
a number
brands,
of sort of private investments.
Exactly. So talk a little bit about, obviously you're obviously an executive in, operationally in a number of businesses, working through it. what are you seeing? What are thoughts that you can give to other entrepreneurs? What are some things that you're doing within those businesses, or the management in those businesses are doing to get through this time?
Well, I think a big part of it is you have to focus on, you know, your core trusted relationships, and have to have a good understanding of the level of business that you're operating within each of those lines of business. And in some cases, it's easier to sell more to services to an existing customer than to go and find new customers.
Right.
Although I do think in this time you have to be creative to look for ways to sell more product or different services to a same customer whose needs are changing because of this environment. So, you know, I think this is a bit of a survival game, and fortunately, the businesses that I'm involved with, they're not being forced to close their doors. I think these businesses that are being forced to close their doors is just a tragic, terrible circumstance, and you know, hopefully we can move towards getting them back on their feet. But I think you've got to look at the business and look at your core capabilities, your strengths, look at your weaknesses, look at your opportunities, find a way that you can use your strengths to exploit the opportunities,
right.
Improve your weaknesses so that you can exploit your opportunities. And you look at your weaknesses and your threats that match up, and try and avoid the threats where you're weak. Don't
Right.
try and think you're going to improve your weaknesses and take on a threat. So
It's interesting. You
I
mentioned
think
like a SWOT
collaborative.
analysis.
I think being collaborative
like
as well.
A SWOT analysis.
Yeah,
Right?
just a simple
Yeah.
SWOT analysis of your business as almost a little temperature check on a regular basis. It's amazing how simple it is. You bring your staff into it. It's something they can relate to. They can agree on, this is a strength. No, that's not a strength. It's maybe a secondary. They agree. They get some consensus, and they start to see, okay, that's a simple strategy we can do. If we get a little better at this, we can go after that opportunity. Another opportunity, I think, is to look at ways, and this is something that's kind of coming out of this, is that look at ways that you can leverage your strengths with somebody else's strengths and find a win-win with somebody that might be not necessarily in the same business, but maybe there's things you can do together and do sort of collaborative approaches.
So
And I think the brands that show that they're trying to do something to help their customers or are going to come out of this with probably some success stories. So
cool.
But I certainly don't have all the answers.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's sort of living through this, you know, almost day by day. But I agree with what you're saying. Being able to get out in front of it, you know, figuring out what your strengths are, and sort of looking at opportunities to utilize those strengths, and then obviously reducing, you know, sort of, you know, the threats maybe, so cash flows and financial issues that might be coming in as a result of, you know, loss of revenue in certain areas, or like you said, completely having to shut down maybe a physical location, and then looking at maybe other ways to take that, you know, take a new leap, a new direction for your business, right? And also, you know, the digital aspect and the collaboration aspect, collaborative. I think that's kind of interesting, and being a thought leader or a brand that gets out there and starts to really have that communication. Like it's funny how everyone that has been on here has said a lot of the very same things, right? Communication's key with your stakeholders, whether that's your, you know, your suppliers, your customers, you know, your staff. So basically that, you know, communicating with your environment, so that they know where you are today, where you've gone, where you've been, where you're going. And so they can all sort of make, you know, somewhat educated decisions when they're thinking about their own thoughts or their own course in their own, you know, everyday lives, right? So it's important. So I'm gonna throw a little curveball. I said it was gonna be easy, but I've asked everyone pretty much the same question. Don't worry, it's okay. It's not that difficult. If there was one piece of advice, you've almost kind of answered it anyways. If there was one piece of advice that you would give an entrepreneur who's starting out or who's just recently started, because that's probably the person that's in the most, I think, difficult position right now, is somebody who started 6 months ago, right? So the funds are, their whole business model could be completely turned on its head. But what would be one piece of advice that you would give to, entrepreneurs and business owners, across the board, that they should pay attention to, or that, that they should know when starting or running a business?
I would say simply that, it's an adage that life is a contact sport. Okay. And I think
boxing,
it's hard to do.
There you go, Joe Tilley.
It's hard to do it on your own. And it's okay to ask people for help and advice and insight as you bounce your ideas off people. And then I think in doing that, you're going to start to get some clarity on your vision. You'll get some clarity, some confidence in what you're trying to do. And, being an entrepreneur can be a lonely experience.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, in some cases, if you look at a lot of the great businesses, there's often two people that are involved in it, and oftentimes they're they kind of complement one another in their skill sets. And on the big ones, you see that a lot, and even in the smaller ones, I think there's ways that you can maybe bring partners into your idea that can help you accelerate what you're trying to do,
right?
And build your story faster.
Perfect. I like the contact sport. So just for those that are listening, if I have to explain it, it means like a network, right? It's getting out there and connecting with people. It's not so much physically, punching people. It's a contact sport in that, the more contacts you make, the more feedback, and we're starting, this show is going to morph into, I think a title might be feedbackers, where people can start to get feedback. But it's that ability to network, communicate, get out there, talk about what you're doing, get some feedback, use that feedback loop to improve what you're doing. And then, as you said, the next step to that is bringing on sort of key components or partners, so that together, you can go farther. I think there's the term, alone you can go faster, together you can go further, right?
Yeah, and a lot of the good entrepreneurs that I've kind of admired over the years, oftentimes they do that very well. When they're getting into big decisions, they get out there and sort of do a bit of a circle of their idea across a lot of people, get some opinions, and then they come back with kind of a distilled understanding of maybe a better understanding of the decision. But it's not a game of perfect, and it's much like golf. You just want to get the ball in the fairway and keep moving it forward.
Exactly. I appreciate the compliment, though. Thanks. Being such a great entrepreneur myself, I know your thoughts of me are high. That was we'll end on that joke. Nothing more needs to be said. But anyways, Michael, again, I appreciate everything you've done. Obviously, it's great having worked with you through this process. So thank you for taking the time, getting your camera fixed so you could be on the live here. Appreciate that. For all of you that are watching, we'll actually, I guess, April 27th. Is there anything you wanted to give to the audience? Any last minute thoughts, tips, tip of the day for COVID-19? No? Other than just it's a contact sport?
Be safe, be happy, and we will get through this together.
Exactly. We'll get through this together. So thanks for joining me, everyone. Michael, again, thank you for joining me. April 27th, backers will be launching on the 108 Securities funding portal. So we'll be going live with our campaign, Raising Capital for Backers, which will be sort of a beta test of what you can, as an entrepreneur, also do by launching your very own campaign on the Backers platform on the 108 Securities. I keep getting my fingers crossed here up. But so be sure to stay tuned for that. Tomorrow's guest, I actually have an amazing guest. I have Jennifer Botterill, Canadian women's Canadian women's hockey gold medal champion. She will be joining me tomorrow, so stay tuned for that, and have yourselves a great day. Stay safe, and we'll talk soon. Thanks. Bye.